Okay, so we're at about 180 there. I got my little test rig going, and the water is about 170, so not terrible. Much closer than it was. I was guessing it was probably 40 degrees over, but everything seems to check out. I fixed that little grounding problem where the wires were grounding to that little case. I used electrician in a can. To put a little dibble on the little things that slide in there, and just give them a little bit extra clearance. And then of course I separated the wiring so that when I'm plugging and unplugging, I'm over here and not jamming stuff into the back. So right now everything looks like it's working together, and I think we're good to go. Or maybe it was those goofy clips. So I'm going to try to rebuild that. So anyways, I think that guy is good. And you can't see 5 degrees. You can barely see 5 degrees on it. So I think we're good. That gives me more confidence that we're not going to overheat. It's all that work we did with changing the radiator and airflow and all that. I don't like to see it up there. But in-car testing, one of those guys showed that it was 30 to 40 degrees hot. So I think I may have figured that one out. Anyways, we'll play with that and we'll continue on. Confident that this gauge is okay. And we'll go from there. No, I forgot. I was going to show you. That's the temp probe. So the one on the big end is going to ground, which is also the ground for my gauge. The sender end is right there. Goes to the sender side. And I was playing with a little trimmer pot, but that one's so coarse it didn't help. So I just took it out. And we're still 190-ish. It's close. It's close enough, I think. Well, on second thought, I'm letting it cool down. It's around 160 degrees. And my old gauge is reading correctly. What I may have done is pushed my pins in too far. So ground and the sensor pin may have been slightly touching and causing high temperature readings. So if I start to put ground see it ground to my sensor line and it starts to bump temperature up. So I may have done that. So I'm going to have to try to re-engineer how I mounted these. So you can see the volt gauge, and it may have that same problem too. So we'll go in and play with these. Temperature gauge worked well. That one I didn't push in too far. Maybe I screwed that one up. And I know I have to monkey with the oil pressure gauge. As you can see, I put that little square chunk that I cut out of the housing. When I try to loosen it up, it just broke that off. These will hold the faces on decent because they have these little plastic nibs. But this one doesn't. So you can see my here to try to hold that face. What I think I'm going to do is go down, design something up on CAD, and 3D print that little bastard out. Some little cork ring thing that'll hold that face up. And then we'll have our oil pressure in the car again. And go from there. We'll give it a shot. CAT scan approved. So I've been playing with this oil pressure one. So I whipped up this little stand in Fusion 360 and 3D printed it to try to emulate what they're doing with the other gauges. They have a little plastic bit that holds the face on that I just used a little contact cement. So I made that one for the oil pressure one. Hopefully that'll keep it from rattling around too much and then knocking that little link off. And the other part I had was when I went to go install it and reinstall it, of course you're doing that little compression nut on the back and tighten it. So I found these bits. I'm going to make a little union so that when I install it and reinstall it, I'll be using 2 wrenches over here and then a short little piece of hose or that copper tubing to go to the gauge, so I don't apply any torque. Are you knocking stuff over? Sure looks like she did. Alright, so a little update on the rebuilding these gauges. And then this guy gets plopped on here. There we go. Okay. So we're at about 180 there. I got my little test rig going. And the water is about 170. So not terrible. Much closer than it was. I was guessing it was probably 40 degrees over. But everything seems to check out. I fixed that little grounding problem where the wires were grounding to that little case. I used electrician in a can. To put a little dibble on the little things that slide in there and just give them a little bit extra clearance. And then of course I separated the wiring so that when I'm plugging and unplugging, I'm over here and not jamming stuff into the back. So right now everything looks like it's working together, and I think we're good to go.